This is a test of the city of Palatka audio system. Yeah, I was gonna. That's voting 3, voting 1, voting 2, 5. Guys, 4. Yeah. Guys, 1.
Agency, the Palatka Community Development Agency meeting on April 10th, 2023. From the Parliament order. We'll understand the invitation, pass the morning.
Good evening, everybody. Father, we thank you once again for this day. We thank you because you've been so good. You brought us together again. And Lord, we say thank you. We pray for your guidance, for your directions, for your instructions. Help us, God, in decision making, that we may do what is necessary to move the city forward. We pray, God, for the wisdom in this and all that we undergird to do for your glory. We thank you and we praise you and we magnify you because there is nobody, God, but you. And we thank you. Amen.
Thank you. And on the kind to Lawyers' Day tomorrow, can you read the pledge?
Sir, please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mayor Graham. Commissioner Tammy McCaskill. Here. Commissioner Justin Campbell. Commissioner Will Jones.
Present.
Commissioner Rufus Boren.
Present.
Ms. Teresa Jackson. Here. Commissioner Terry Turner.
Here.
Mayor Robbie Cray.
Present.
All members are present and accounted for, and we have a quorum.
Thank you. Has everybody had an opportunity to read the minutes and do we have a motion to approve minutes of February 13th, 2023?
Motion to approve February 13, 2023.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Thank you. We're going to open the floor for public comments. We do have two requests. Mr. Roach, please. Please give your name and address for the record and keep your comments to 3 minutes or less. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Roach, I live at 312 Dodge Street. Congratulations, Don, but we do know what Shakespeare said about lawyers.
Do you know why you said it though?
Yes, I know, but he still said it. Let's kill them all. I don't really have to.
There we have the lead in to be kind of lawyers, right?
I actually bought my home 6 years ago, and I know it's not as long as many people, but considering everything that's happened in our society and our life and our world, it actually is a very long time. I have been to many CRA meetings where I was one of the only people there, maybe with Robbie. And Robbie, you know that. And I have listened to rhetoric and requests denied on a level that is really very sad. Now we're in a new world and a new era, and I'm always optimistic. I'm a glass half full girl. So primarily the main thing that I want to say in public comment is that I do hope that the CRA thinks very long and hard before they ever distribute funding to buy property, whether it's city owned, whether it's private owned, whether it's residential, or whether it's commercial. There are homeowners and business owners that have staked their whole lives in this community. And the CRA should never be used for anything except the betterment of the community and not the betterment of an individual or a corporation or any kind of entity that is self-serving. I don't think that's the intent of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Hafner?
Gary Hampton, 122 Hilton Lane in East Palatka. This would be used for any company, right? I think we CRA.
This is for general, for everything.
Oh, okay, well, I just wanted to say it publicly. I would like for the city and the police department to take a look at the turn lane on 3rd Street where it joins Reed Street. Because when all the new attorney's office is open, there are now a lot of those employees parking along Third Street. They normally don't leave enough room for even one person to pull into the lane, into the right turn lane. There needs to be room for at least 3 people because the left turn lane gets filled up and nobody can get around it. So I would suggest that.
I think you're talking Second Street.
I should come back for city commission meeting to mention that as well.
Well, I see the community.
I think we're actually talking about Second Street though, not Third.
Anyway, thank you.
Anyone else for public comments? With that said, we're closing public comments. We'll move on to regular business, presentation, discussion of the Main Street program. That's what you put, to see if John can, come up, Mr. Please, and introduce yourself.
All right, I am, pulling up the slide, I'm Wayne Carter. I'm here on behalf of Catherine Beck at the Florida Coordinating Program. I'm the Executive Director at Main Street from DeLand. DeLand is a long-running Main Street, successful Main Street. It started in 1985, it continues on today. I'm also a founding member of the Florida Downtown Association. This is a group of experienced directors who realize that Florida, in the current situation, is understaffed. There are about 60 communities now active in the Florida Main Street program. And 1 or 2 people can handle all of that. So me and a few others are trying to fill in some of the gaps. My experience in Main Street began in 2005. So I've been kind of around this program for a while. And I think it's great. And I think, so what I wanted to do really is just start a little bit of talking about what Main Street is. It's a 4-point approach to economic revitalization. One of the best definitions I ever heard of it is that it is a volunteer-driven, reservation-based approach to economic development. And so what happened in the 60s, 70s, and I'm not sure what happened in your town here, but it probably followed the same kind of thing that happened everywhere else. 60s, 70s, 80s, the towns became vacant. People moved away, went to the bigger cities, they moved out to the suburbs. They did all these things and left the downtowns vacant and in ruin. That's pretty much what happened right here.
Yeah.
At some point, it happened in the land, and at one point when Main Street started there, the vacancy, well, the occupancy rate was, below 60%. So that happened all over the country. And so the National Trust for Historic Preservation said, we got to do something to protect our cities. And they came up with what was called the Main Street approach. The Main Street approach is a 4-point approach. Includes design, which is just to create an inviting, welcoming, walkable experience in your downtown, shopping, dining, those kind of things that you might see in a downtown. Good lighting, good public spaces, those kind of things. Promotion is 3 things. It's special events, which are festivals and those kind of things. There's merchant type events. These are things that the Main Street program does to get cash registers actually to ring in this town. And then there is an image campaign. And I know y'all went through an image campaign before or something like It's in Our Nature or something like that. What about Black? Well, It's in Our Nature. Actually a very good program. I don't know if you're still following in that, what maybe you. Organization is like a committee for the Main Street program. Organization is where the work gets done in committees. It doesn't get done in board. The organization is to build leadership in the community, to build partnerships, to do those things that will allow a program to be successful. You need funding, you need support, you need partnerships, you need a bunch of whole things. A community-wide support is excellent. And you do all these things here so that you have economic vitality. And so really the goal of all the events is to make and create an environment for business to be successful in your downtown. And that's really what you do. You build a diverse base businesses, you catalyze your investment, just invest in the things that need to be invested in to create that environment. But you create a strong entrepreneur ecosystem, what they call it now. I don't know if I know what ecosystem really means, but, yeah, I'm a little bit old school. All I know is the 4 points work. Do all those things at the same time as a community, you're gonna revitalize the community. And in the land, we found that the healthier the community is, the easier it is to recruit business out by the airport. But at some point, they're gonna ask, what's your town like? What's your downtown like? Are my employees gonna want to live here? I mean, they're gonna ask those kind of questions. And so what Main Street can help do as much as anybody is create that environment where there's excitement and for your downtown. Well, that's the wrong way, I guess. Try that. Our friends up in Marietta, Main Street kind of put together a little chart here, and I'm sorry that it's so small, but I couldn't figure out how to make it bigger. But they went through like what the chamber does, what economic vitality or their economic development people do, what their tourism people do, and then what Main Street do. And they listed some things. And Main Street was the only one that checked all the boxes. I think that's pretty important because what they do to the community on a small scale really grows out into the community. Like I said, and when you create this for other an environment for other businesses to come to town that aren't in the downtown. So in DeLand, we've been doing this 35 years, 37 years, I guess. We work with the CRA, Contractor Services. We review grants, we market the downtown, and you know, if you don't have a cheerleader for downtown, then your downtown's not going to be, you know, in the future. I'm always going, hey, don't look at Sanford, look here at DeLand. You know, kind of one of those things. But that's really what we're doing is focusing, marketing downtown. We maintain a proper inventory. We know what the occupancy rate is all the time. We try to figure out if a space is empty, what we can do to help fill that space. We assist the city on a variety of projects. Sometimes they'll come to me and say, hey, you know, these guys have got their A-frames out in the city, you know, it's in violation of the code. And they said, we go talk to them. And I usually go and say, hey, can we move your sign, or would you rather the code guy comes here? And they say, no, let's move the sign. And so, you know, we do little things like that for the city all the time. At least 10 promotions a year. We do some special events. We do some image campaigns. And then one of the other things we do in the land, there's a lot of people that aren't Main Street that do a lot of events. And so we help them through the committee process. We give them what they need. And so a lot of times what we're doing is just clerical. We don't approve events or anything like that, but we do try to have all their I's dotted and T's crossed by the time it gets to the city. So what benefit could that be to the Palatka? First of all, it's leverage of the CRA money. It's pennies on the dollar return you're going to get to this. You can create a place where volunteers can come in and participate and be a part of the community. You give them access to some things. One of the city managers came to Eustis when I first started Main Street, and he says, when government got in the way, you tend to lose your volunteer. Well, that's exactly what happened in Eustis when government got in the way. And so, yeah, we can create an environment because it is a community-driven, volunteer-driven basis. We can do events, we can do some other things that cost the city, thousands of dollars that just been staffed and things we can do with volunteers. So it involves all the shareholders, not just the property owners downtown. You build it, Main Street can make it successful. So whatever you're trying to do in your downtown, what Main Street will do is take it to that next level. You're going to have increased occupancy rates. I drove through town and you can, I don't know where the district is, but going down one of the main streets here is probably 8 or 10 just right there. You're going to have increased property values. It's going to generate more tax dollars for the CRA. But mainly, you're going to have an environment where a business can come in to succeed. You're going to be bringing people in. You're going to become the center of the community, the heart of the community. And cash rates are going to ring, and you're going to collect sales taxes and things like that. All of that is going to be good for this community. But downtown historically has been the heart of the community. And it's been a while since some towns have had that. And so the Main Street approach is a very simple approach. It's been proven successful, 2,000 times across the country. If you look at the land, if you look at Ormond Beach, Crescent City just joined. We've got Stanford, much like Palatka, and then, in Main Street, they got away from it, and then Stanford came back about 3 years ago back into the program. So there is a lot of good by involving your community into the Main Street program. And so really that's my presentation to you, but I would very much like to answer what maybe some of your concerns might be.
Commissioner Campbell?
My questions may not be so much directed towards you. It may be to staff, even former commissioner probably to answer some of these questions. We did have a Main Street program, right? Why did it end? And do we know why it ended?
Mr. Griffith?
He went out.
And the success rate of it during the time that it was implemented?
While we're waiting for Mr. Griffith to come in, the reports that were attached to this packet kind of gave data on the success of the program during that time when it ended. And if you look at that data, it really was successful. Mr. Griffith?
I'm speaking, the reason I'm asking the question is because I have the data, but to our citizens that was not made privy. They're not privy to the same
Right.
information. Hence the reason why I asked the question so that it can be publicly documented.
Mr. Griffith, Commissioner Campbell has a question. Can you repeat that, please?
Could you speak to, I know we had the Main Street program before. Could you speak to why it ended, how successful it was during the implementation process while it was implemented?
So I would point you towards some of the Main Street annual reports, because they give a lot more detail in regards to just some of the events, and some of the programs that were in the Main Street. It talked about the volunteer hours. It talked about leveraging of the private funding. They track new businesses that open, businesses that close on an annual basis. And so that if you look at those annual reports that are filed with the state, that's probably the best metric to look at. Some of the programs that Main Street put on during my tenure with the city were the Third Friday events. They held wine strolls. They started the ribbon cuttings for the businesses, among various other kind of volunteer efforts. I know there were times when they got out and they put plantings along St. John's Avenue. They did pressure washing. They planted trees in parking lots downtown. Bunch of stuff like that. I could go on and on.
Commissioner
Sorry.
Campbell's question was welcome public, everyone to hear some of that information.
The main question was why did it end? That's the main question. Not this.
Okay, I can give you a little bit of a history lesson then. Charles Rudd was the last Main Street manager that we had. Charles sought an advancement opportunity in another community. When he left, the commission and the CRA did not fill the Main Street manager role. Our population, the Florida Main Street Association requires you to have a full-time Main Street manager, and that's when we lost our designation. And the position was no longer funded with the CRA.
And it was something that we as a city tried in an attempt to bring back, correct?
No, there was no formal direction to get it to fill the position from this board.
You have a question?
I don't have any.
Commissioner Warren? Ms. Jackson, any questions?
Not at this time. I was able to speak to Mr. Rudd and Ms. Christine down in Crescent City, so they answered a lot of questions.
Okay, Commissioner Turner?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Back in the earlier days at 10 and 11 along in there, I actually sat on the Main Street Board of Directors and Executive. And a lot of the things that are handled differently now were handled by Main Street then, which is not saying one's better than the other, I'm just saying it's different now. They used the, Main Street Executive Committee used to be your, committee that would review and make recommendations on your building improvement grant program and your other programs that were in place at the time. They still have a citizens committee now, it's just not the Main Street committee. So I never knew why they stopped having it. My biggest question would be, does the city or the CRA have enough money to fund this program again? Because the whole Main Street program all boils down to money. If you look in them reports back in 10, 11, and 12, there was $1 million in it. And over a period of time, that's why it was successful with the big numbers and the what have you, is because they got grants on top of just TIP funding that they used at the time. I think they used some of that also, but they also got grants involved in the program too. So it's all about the funding that makes Main Street good. If the money's available, then you can make a Main Street program great. If the money's not available, then you already have the main factors of it covered in other ways, the best I can tell.
I don't know who wants to speak to the funding aspect from the CRA, Mr. Griffith, as far as the Main Street Director position. Again, give a little history. That's what was funded, and then monies were used as well beyond that.
So historically, it's been funded from the downtown TIP district. This year it is not, but it's not to say that you can't make a budget amendment and allocate funding to fill that role.
And it was to fill the salary of the Main Street, that salary.
Yes.
The position. Okay.
From the downtown
Right.
TIP district only, not from the north and south.
So let me ask you this, will we be duplicating any efforts, the efforts that we do already with the city? Like you mentioned, pressure washing, you mentioned putting up plants. City does that now, we're doing the streetscaping. So will we be duplicating, or do you feel that a lot of those efforts will be duplicated?
Personally, I think it would be an enhancement, Commissioner. I believe that the efforts are not redundant. I think that Main Street went over and above what your city provides, just its general fund services departments. And it's not just maintenance that it provides. I mean, it really does leverage volunteer efforts in the downtown area. When I first came back from college, one of the things that Woody Boynton had me do, I staffed the committees along with Commissioner Turner over here. He is correct. There was a buildup of funds leading into 2010, 2011. Put a lot of money on the streets and building improvement grants and facade grants. Some really good projects came out of that. And there were a lot of people that volunteered their time and efforts into those different committees. So to answer your question a little bit more directly, I don't think it would be redundant or duplicate. I think it would be an enhancement.
So what about pot of funds when we talk about grants? Are those some of the same grants that we also seek right now for funding for not only downtown area, but all over the city?
So I understand your question to be asking if we were to allocate the funding for the manager, would it be taking away some of our leveraging funding?
No, no. I asked the funding that Representative Turner spoke of, the grants that we have sought for in the past for downtown to that district. Will it be same pot of money? Because remember you telling me that about other projects that I mentioned, that it will impede us ability to go for those similar funds elsewhere throughout the city.
So yes,
We're competing for the same pot of money.
simply, yes, it is the same pot of money. It is your tax increment trust fund for the downtown district. There has been some conversation in the past about merging the Main Street manager and the CRA director position. The city has not had a CRA director other than the plan appoints the city manager as a CRA director in my 12 years here at the city. So you would be utilizing the same funds to fund that position.
Yeah. So with us being a search for a city manager, and we're gonna need those funds to hire one. maybe we should try, I'm just suggesting, if I may, that is one of the functions that the city manager do, direct the main street. And just personally, I would definitely like to see us be more active, but we have to help with those funds.
So if you were to fund the Main Street manager, there's no money other than the administrative reimbursement cost that is funded in the current budget for the downtown north and south districts that goes towards the city manager's salary, along with the finance director, a portion of my salary, and some other administrative staff. It's a small percentage of our personnel costs, but that's not the same pot of money. Historically, it was a separate line item for the Main Street manager.
So I just asked, you really said it was. Okay. Just one.
Commissioner Trent?
What would be the chances of us getting a set of financials on what's available in the CRA as far as money for the different funding opportunities that we're going to be talking about today, along with the reserves that we're going to be talking about, some of them at the end of the meeting today? What would be the chances of actually seeing a set of financials on the TIF funds and the CRA and what have you? I think that's very relevant to this whole discussion over the Main Street, along with the funding of the building improvement grants shortly, and then the end of the meeting when we're going to discuss that issue about the street. So wonder if we could possibly get some of that.
Any manager Holmes?
Well, we typically provide that information each time we go through the process of the grant cycle. Obviously, all you have to do is ask for it. We can provide whatever information that you're looking for in terms of the overall money.
Sonny, do you know when the first budget workshop is for the CRA?
2 seconds, please.
So your budget calendar actually calls for a CRA meeting.
The first budget workshop for the CRA is July the 20th. The second is August 17th.
Did y'all have one last year perhaps? So
Yes,
if
sir.
we have the information from last year's budget meeting?
Well, we can provide you a current set of financials for the all funds in the TIF districts. That's fairly easy.
I think it's almost imperative, if we're gonna be handing out money today and in other meetings, that we kind of know how much money we got to hand out.
We always tell you how much money you hand out when we're talking about the grant programs. We know how much we budgeted originally.
I know that we've talked about this earlier today, and so I get it, but I would like to see a set of financials unless it's an issue.
Not a problem.
I sure don't want to pick a fight in my second meeting with my buddy, the city manager.
First meeting.
So to kind of add to that point, you're at the point in the year where if you start talking about hypothetically what you'd like to see in your budget, it's an appropriate time to say, okay, well, we've got a budget workshop coming up. We would like staff to explore placing that in the budget to see the fiscal implications, because we're going to get the projected TIF revenue from the property appraiser and tax collector here fairly soon. Staff actually is directed to have our budget request in by April 20th, so the end of this month.
You should get the numbers in June.
Yeah, and you're currently, just so you know, but you're going to get this information a little bit later. You're currently sitting on $334,461 in reserves in downtown cities. So there is money that can be allocated to this. We've been building up some reserves to these capital projects. And basically it's as a result of not funding that position and a few other things for the past 4 to 5 years.
And the budget for this last grant cycle was the first cycle that we budgeted money for the different grants in advance. So there was a budget set for each of those districts that you're working out of in terms of your two grant cycles per year that we recently adopted. So, but it's not a problem at all to provide a financial summary of what's there right now. The reserves in each of the 3 districts. It's not a problem at all.
Yeah. I was saying that it's fair that you're right, because we moved to this board.
Just out of curiosity, and of course, you don't have to get specific, what will it cost to have someone in a position as, Main Street manager? What would be the range?
Mr. Carter, do you know the average salary, so to speak?
You should be looking somewhere between 50 and 75, probably more like 50, 60. Now, that doesn't include any benefits, healthcare, or whatever else as a city employee someone might get. But around 50 with benefits, you could probably find somebody pretty good.
Our benefits run what, about 40%, Jonathan, in total?
Yes.
So, you know,
75.
Commissioner Morrow?
Yeah, it'd be running about 75. But again, to speak to dealing, if you're dealing with, so what does yours look like in terms of staffing, among other things? Then I know your, I guess, median income for your area is a lot different than ours and how we implement funds here.
Yeah, our staffing is, we have, I'm a full-time director. We also have a full-time assistant director, and my board noticed a few gray hairs and kind of worried about, keeping this thing rolling, so we hired an assistant director.
Okay.
And then I have a couple part-time. I have a bookkeeper that not only keeps our books, but some of the other small nonprofits around town, we keep their books, that kind of thing. So Main Street cannot work without staff, even if you were like 5,000 people that have to have a part-timer. Okay, 5,000 people, but we need full-timer. And that's just the way it goes. If you could staff an assistant or something in there, then that would be good. And they would pay for themselves too.
In the course, you have at least about 4, 5 or more paid staff.
Yes, I have 2 full-time, counting me, and 3 part-time.
So that's 5.
So that part-time is like 20 hours a week, something like that.
But 5 paid
Mhm.
in your budget. Look like
Our budget is around 315,000
for the 5 people.
for the whole organization.
Oh,
Yeah, so we run pretty lean, but we get a lot done.
and the number of volunteers. But this.
I don't know, I will say probably our volunteer list is about 150. We do a lot of events there, and some events will take maybe up to 70 people.
But Joanne is at a different point in
Yeah. I wish that for you, that's, we're 35 years in the making, and so every few years we make some adjustments.
Yeah, I'm just asking questions. I'm trying to understand, what does it look like when you say you have successful?
Yeah. Now, well, let me just kind of back up about 9 or 10 years. The first 8 years of my Main Street career, I was the only person in the office. And we had a program, we had a monthly street party, we did Christmas, we did boat parades, we did fireworks, we did a lot of things. And it was all volunteer driven. And even we did a wine stroll that kind of, I come back from a conference and I see a good idea, and I just kind of write it on the board, and sometimes it takes right away, and sometimes it takes a little while for somebody to kind of catch my vision for it. And so I had one lady who was a volunteer, and I said she was a good one, we on the board, and she came to me and said, I've never been part of an organization who's so fun. And I thought, oh my God, there she goes out the door. But she said, I've never been part of an organization that got so much done. And she said, I want to do that wine show. So I'm just telling you, if you give the volunteers an opportunity and the community shares a vision, there's no way that this Main Street program can't make your town better. Just with the people and an environment for the business, and I look at Palatka probably from different eyes than you do. I see Jacksonville just a few miles down the road, St. Augustine just a few miles down the road. What can we do to bring these people here? You've got a lot to offer. You got a lot to offer. St. John River and the forest and all these things. You got a lot to offer people. And Main Street can get there.
We've had it here before and it's always really exploring opportunities. So I just, of course, thank you for that.
Okay, we do have a couple of speakers on this particular topic. Ms. Kitchens.
The league with Kitchens, 1027 South Phillips, Florida, and I've been on the convention from January of 06 to January of 2015. I wasn't going to speak today, but Mr. Campbell basically requested it. The Main Street program, talk is cheap, Main Street is not. Palatka could not afford the Main Street program. We got nothing back for our money, basically. When it started out, before I was on the commission, Debbie Banks was the Main Street manager. I heard no complaints from people. It apparently ran pretty well. And Gas became the city manager, and the Main Street manager, and later Kathy Butler, I think she got married, and I started hearing complaints. Then we got an interim, well, he didn't last. We had a fellow named Mr. Prescott who was hired as the Main Street manager. I don't think he even made it to his office. He started downtown Palatka and insulted probably 5 of our merchants, including John Browning, insulted them royally, to where they just about almost marched on City Hall. So he was canned before he got the job. And then we got the wonderful Mr. Charles Rudd. Mr. Rudd did nothing for Palatka. He did nothing but promotion. It cost the city commission money. It cost Palatka money. The merchants complained to me. They hated Main Street. The citizens complained they did not support Main Street. Mr. Rudd instigated a series of ordinance changes to the planning director. At one point, then City Attorney Don Holmes asked me, what the heck is all this about? Why are all these ordinances being changed? And I had to tell him it was Charles Rudd asking Mr. Crowe, the planning director, to change them. Some of the harmful things that he did for downtown Palatka was a downtown overlay, prohibiting parking lots on St. John's Avenue, prohibiting driveways from parking lots on the St. John's Avenue. You need parking lots if you want people to come out with their cars and shop. You have to have parking lots. That was outlawed. Outlawed government offices. The government offices downtown have been the backbone of Palatka since the beginning of Palatka. Those people shop in Palatka, they eat in downtown Palatka, and they come back after hours and party in downtown Palatka. Yeah, they wanted to outlaw churches all over downtown Palatka, but after quite a stink was raised, the only outlawed churches on St. John's Avenue because, quote, we don't want those kind of people in downtown Palatka. They don't shop, they don't eat, they don't drink. It's not a destination. So we had a series of problems with the Main Street program. It wasn't working. And it basically degraded into nothing but promotional events. The third Friday happened every month. They had alcohol strolls, consisting of wine strolls, beer strolls, martini strolls, vodka strolls, you name it. County loves to drink. I have no problem with that, but most of us don't want to see it in the streets. But it downgraded to nothing but that. The third Friday cost the city $20,000 or $30,000. And I think the largest one that was ever attended, it was 25 people, and it was a political forum connected to it. It was a colossal failure in the city of Palatka. We're not Deland. Deland is like Gainesville. It has a major state college, Stetson University. We're not going to get the tourists from St. Augustine because we don't have the old fort. We're not 400 years old. And to get people to drive down here from Jacksonville when they can party up in Jacksonville, we're not going to get that. Main Street is not a good fit for Palatka. As Mr. Jones mentioned, we already do a lot of those things. We do the landscaping. We have, and we're fixing to hire already in hiring some personal public relations person to promote downtown Palatka. The Chamber of Commerce is the economic development for downtown Palatka. We don't need Main Street. It didn't work before. It won't work now. The citizens don't support it. The merchants don't. At least the majority of them.
Thank
So,
you.
hope that helps you, Mr. Campbell.
Very happy.
Gary Hatcher, 122 Hilty Lane in East Palatka. I didn't really come prepared to argue with anybody tonight, but I can tell you I've been involved with Main Street since I think 1995. I know Commissioner Turner was around at that point as well. And to answer one of the questions, one of the reasons that Mr. Rudd left here was simply because of lack of support from the city. And I mean, that's where it really boils down to. There were other opportunities opened up, much better opportunities for him. He took them and was successful at them. So setting that aside for a minute, Main Street, it's been mentioned earlier, truly is a volunteer organization. The structure is set up with a board, with an executive committee, et cetera, et cetera. And if all the things are done using the Main Street approach, eventually you will get to a point where Main Street can help fund a lot of the things that we're talking about. some of the cost of the Main Street manager, some of the cost of the bookkeeping and so forth. That, a lot of that to begin with can be handled by volunteers. We had a great number of volunteers in this city at one time. You know what discourages volunteers in this city? Most of the volunteers that we got were new people to this city. And it's simply because they recognize the beauty of this city and what we have downtown and what this downtown could represent. Mr. Turner was here earlier in his life. I was here early, graduated from high school here. And I'm going to tell you, downtown Palatka was a bustling town. It truly was. There's no reason that it can't be today. You say that people won't come from St. Augustine, they won't come from Jacksonville. When I was younger, now granted, things have changed, I don't deny this, but people from St. Augustine used to come to Palatka to shop. And that's not a story made up, that's fact. So I think we need to look at it from a slightly different perspective, one that's not so negative as what we've already heard. The Main Street program is a proven program. If it's handled by volunteers with a good Main Street manager, a lot can be accomplished over time. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but it can happen over time and become a very productive program, help new businesses in this town. And one of the biggest efforts we would ever have to make are get our own local citizens involved. At one point in time, Main Street, when Charles was here, I was actually the president of Main Street at the time. We had, I think, 14 different organizations in this town who sent liaison representatives to our board meetings. We made them part of our board. It was a great setup of people getting into trying to get things going, but that's what it takes. Government can't do this. I mean, you might as well just get that out of your mind. It will never work. It never has worked, and it won't work now. Next. Am I going that long? Okay, anyway, I'm telling you, I support the Main Street program. I'm now current president of Revitalize Historic Palatka, which is primarily old Main Street members. But I strongly suggest you look at the program seriously and do something about getting it back. Thank you.
One more, and then we're going to turn that name and address for the record, and then we do have a vote.
And it's Redlake 511 North Third Street, Palatka, Florida. I think that, and I'm not the only one, there is research about this, that one of the main reasons that the Main Street is in such a poor condition is that there are big box businesses that kind of suck the life away from small communities. Like Home Depot, Lowe's, Walmart, and all that. We have to understand that a lot of people just have a certain budget, and to shop in the Main Street is expensive. So what you're looking at basically is then people from out of town. Most people that live here, I'm one of them, cannot really shop downtown. I just don't have the finances for it. And I do it maybe once in a while, but I can't do it on a regular basis. Where I'm from is a small town in Holland. What we have with Main Street is that there is a butcher and a baker and a grocery store. So people do their groceries there and also walk Main Street and go to the different stores. If we would have stores like that where people just can do their regular groceries, I think it would really help Main Street. Just the specialty stores, what are now basically, it won't do it. You have to integrate all the other aspects to be successful. That's all I want to say.
Thank you.
Very well.
And one lady that's holding the hand up.
Okay, just quickly come up, Ms. Thompson, rather. Did you hear? Ms. Thompson. Name and address, and please try to keep 3 minutes.
I haven't finished filling this out.
That's okay, you can get it in after you speak. That would be better.
Hi, my name is June Thompson. I live at 617 Emmett Street. And I used to be the executive director of the Arts Council and worked with a lot of the programs like this a lot. Basically what I found from those things is that the grants, you can mainly get grants for like the pay for the managers, I was paid for by grants as the executive director. And you can get a lot more grants coming in if they can see the stability of you having a Main Street manager. That will help you get a lot of grants. And another thing I wanted to express is that so few people really know the history of Palatka. We have so much history we need to be celebrating, and much like St. Augustine does. I think we were probably the second city, second oldest city in the state of Florida, maybe right along like with Jacksonville. But we're not celebrating our history. I think we need a museum here that would take us back from like the prehistoric animals to the Seminole Indians to William Bartram and the Civil War, all of that. We need to be explaining to the locals and to tourists about how wonderful Palatka is. I think if we did that, then people would want to buy into Palatka, would have something to sell to people that would be coming in. Anyway, I see a museum as vital. And at the University of Florida, they have a lot of artifacts from the time when the Timucuans, the Miccosukee Indians lived here. They have the canoes and all different kinds of artifacts anyway. That they're saving for us. And they're keeping them. Some of these were found in like anyway, they're saving them for us. So we could have access to those at any time. And we also have access to their funds to build museums, to help us build museums in Tallahassee. If they're ready to give us the money, we have to ask for it. We have to have a plan.
Thank you. Are you also at this point? Thank you for coming.
It does come down to money. You gotta have money to do this. I understand that. It comes down to the community's desire to have the best that they can be. You want the best town you can have, you probably need to look really close at Main Street as a way to get it. And so, I can talk philosophy, and I really don't want to, but I want you to see yourself as a town worthy of somebody driving to. I want you to picture that right now. And Main Street can help you do that. And so if it's $50,000, $75,000 a year, if that's the only thing that's keeping your community getting on the map at the end, to place it right in the certain state. Is that a good investment? I don't know. If not, you got to figure out what is the return you're looking for. What is your return on investment? So much of what we do is we can qualify. It's a happy town. We have people show up at events. They support us. Like through COVID, we just called them and say, hey, we need you downtown. Come downtown and shop. And they did. It did. We didn't lose anything. One business opened in March. COVID hit on March 17th in the land, and they closed April 30th. That's one business we lost due to COVID. Cause we worked hard to get them ready. We also called any favors and said, hey, this is your town, come support. I don't know what happened here in Palatka, but you guys, you need to step back and just look at this. Just walk slowly through this town and imagine what it would take for somebody to drive in. And if you like that idea, then you need to make sure your Main Street program is proper. That's what I got.
Thank you. Thank you. I can just say that I've been on the Main Street board since 16 years ago, but I'm involved in Main Street for the board after that. Main Street also did a lot of other things. They did help small businesses. Actually went out and became economic ambassadors to recruit some small businesses and walk them through the process. We didn't have a small business development center there at all. And still would do that. We had other events that didn't involve alcohol. We had an arts media, Vienna auction, raised public art. We were on the committee that the big bass fish that was in part of Main Street after the moment, some other organizations like the Arts Council. There is a lot of other things that Main Street has done and would continue to do for the downtown commercial district. When we say, yes, we're going to be doing a streetscape project, but the long-term maintenance of that, the city does not have the resources. We would keep those pots and plants going on a daily basis and those kind of things, which, again, the day-to-day downtown, I think at this point, whatever this board decides, it may be helpful to first ask the businesses downtown what they think. They are paying into the tip in the commercial downtown business district. Maybe they need to be told and see what they think is beneficial, whether Main Street would be good for downtown or not. That's all I have to say. Anybody else? Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to direction modification of building improvement coordinator grant documents.
Madam Mayor, may I ask one, or Karen, may I ask one question? Is there any direction you want to give the staff regarding the Main Street program at this time?
I thought perhaps to get input from the downtown businesses. There are some folks here that are downtown business owners that came, I believe, in support of Main Street. I could be wrong, though. I'm not speaking for them, but they are here physically. So I don't know if that was, again, an effort that should be made to get them. Some of them are still working or just went home, so they're not able to attend. Maybe we need to ask what their input is on this whole concept.
Did they fill out any cards or want to give input? Or maybe they can just say about polling the businesses?
Well, yeah, that was just an example suggestion. Do you want to come up, Mr. Granger, quickly before we move on?
I think in order for us to adequately address it and get a formal, something more formal to provide or have staff go out and as recommended, do a poll so that we can get more responses from individuals who could not make it due to either still working or other things, or possibly even workshops. At a time where the business is right.
I like the workshop idea and invite people, the businesses from downtown and other people, obviously.
It would just need to be at a time where businesses are closed and be.
So that they can,
Yes.
have a better.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
wouldn't you agree that it probably is an issue for the city commission to take up and bypass CRA? I mean, it's ultimately gonna make the decision, it's ultimately gonna finance the money, it's ultimately gonna decide that we wanna move forward. I mean, obviously, I'm okay, absolutely okay with it, if you can find the funds to do it, or what have you, but I understand that's gonna be an issue, but I mean, I don't mind, but I'm just telling you that the ultimate decision is gonna be made by the city commission, and the city commission was the one that disbanded it before. Wouldn't the city commission be the ones that took it from this point on?
It's coming out of CRA.
But the CRA basically has to give their recommendations to the commission. We can't do that. I don't believe in absence of that.
All right, so what I'm hearing is we'll go ahead and try to solicit some input from folks in the downtown area regarding their thoughts about a Main Street program. And then we can do that in a couple of different ways. Once we've done that, if I'm hearing you correctly, you're looking at perhaps holding a workshop then for further discussions. Is that correct?
Yes, and I also would like to see options of how you guys think we could fund this rather than city funded only, if it's voluntary. Have some solutions, have some suggestions when you come forward versus just saying, hey, we want you guys to fund this, because we already have some challenging positions to fund now currently. And we also are looking for a city manager. So rather how we move forward in the city manager, we don't know what direction that city also would love to be able to take us in. I mean, of course, we are the commission, we're gonna guide, but we may come with an innovative city manager that may have experience leading Main Street projects. Understand? So I think that all those factors, with all those factors, a workshop would be important that we can talk about all of it at one time, along with your input when you bring it.
Just for clarification, the city manager has a lot of tasks on the hands anyway, besides running the Main Street program. It doesn't seem very feasible for them to take that on as well. And also the main. Can I finish, please? The National Main Street program does require for a city with a population of 5,000 if you have a full-time Main Street director. if you're the city manager, you're not the full-time Main Street director, you're the full-time city manager, maybe doing Main Street on the side. Part of the conundrum that happened the last time with city managers, they were in a city position versus funding from the CRA, and they were used for other city responsibilities. They were overseeing the operations of the docents at Bronx and Mulholland and some other things. So they were pulled away. I understand there's a warm body that's funded by the CRA, but they were used for other projects, taking their focus off of Main Street. And it is a requirement of the National Main Street Program that there be a full-time person. With that said, I think we should, the poll could be done electronically and then have a workshop. That's great. I think we can close this topic. Thank you.
Before we close, Madam Mayor, could I ask
Do you
one
want,
last question?
I don't know. if you still-
What are you looking for out of the CRA board? Are you wanting a motion that says that the city commission take it to the next step? Or are you wanting to make the decision as a CRA that we want? Well, I'm just trying to figure out what you're trying to get here. I don't mind having all the meetings you want to have, but I do mind having a meeting just to have a meeting. So where are you trying to get us to? What would you like the CRA board to do? To make a recommendation that the commission look into the city to see if they can fund the position? What are you actually wanting them to do? I'm trying to understand.
Be a decision as whether we want to reinstate the Main Street program, and with that would be funding the position for the Main Street director. That recommendation would have to come from the CRA board, but I guess we're not there yet. We have to have one.
Well, I'm there yet.
And Mr. Grange has been bouncing back and forth, so we'll let him come up.
I didn't know if y'all wanted me to come.
Please come on up. You know, in fairness, just let other people come up, and then we can wrap this topic.
I'm Eddie Granger, my wife is Sherry Granger. We own an urban farmhouse on 7th Street. We get people all every weekend. We're from Gainesville, we're from Jacksonville. We have the ability to pull them in. Just our little store in the cafe in the whole block. So I encourage y'all to, I don't know about a position or not, but we need more help. You know, one of our best things was wine. I think you grew it or somebody did a wine scroll. And it was great. It was a great thing. We had hundreds of people. So, but I encourage it, urban farmhouse, to have a director help. We're 7 days a week and have 3 employees work along with us.
Thank you. Okay, are we clear on everything now, Mr. Holmes? Can you we're gonna move along to the direction modification of building improvement portion grant documents.
Represent you, Mandy.
Sorry, I was just trying to unmute. This is Mandy, I'm here. So the Tax Increment Finance Advisory Committee has made a request that the board considers modifying the grant program documents to require a rendering if they're doing exterior work or modifications. They feel like it will help them to score and rank the projects. And I attached right there the highlight. That would be the one change that would happen.
Move approved.
Thank you.
We have a motion.
And it was a second.
Okay, I'm sorry.
My count second.
No, you said you couldn't even know.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Okay, that was painless. Thank you. Recommendation of award building improvement grant September 2022 site. Michael. That's Michael.
Sorry, it's the baby. He's behaving though. So the committee met at a called meeting, noticed, and they scored and ranked the applications. There were 6 applications total. I'm sorry, 7 total. 6 scored high enough for funding. In the central, in the last cycle, $45,000 was awarded out of a $50,000 budget. However, we did have 3 awarded applicants in the last cycle turned down the awards because the amount wasn't enough to complete the entire project with the cost share. So right now we have 15,000 available in the central district. There are two other available pots of money. We've got about $30,000 in the recruitment project line. That's not including the 20,000 that's already been awarded to the current recruitment grant, the last one that's in process. And then the festival line has 7,500 in it. I have received no complete special event cost share applications for this year so far. And the most that one of those could get would be 2,500. In the South Historic District Fund, there is about $25,000 available. There was only one application in the South District. And there were no applications for the North in this cycle. And I can answer any questions y'all have or try to.
So just if I could, Mandy, to help simplify a little bit, if they didn't pull funds from any other line, tell me that there's $15,000 total available for the Central Business District grants.
Yes.
Okay, so they've got 6 applications that met the minimum threshold.
In the Central District, they have 5 applications that met the minimum threshold.
So 5 that met the threshold, 15 if they don't pull money. If they do pull money, you're saying they could pull how much money and from what fund?
30,000 from the recruitment project fund and 7,500 from festivals.
The festival money, you say you don't have any yet, but that's a budget that goes all the way through September 30th?
That's correct. Yeah, I don't, yes, that was the approved budget for the special events. I do not have any special event cost share grant applications at this time. However, some of that money may have been intended for 4th of July, now that I think about it, because that is a festival that is put on in that area.
And in the event you have, that's all the way through September 30. So that's 7,500. You don't have any applications yet, but that money is allocated all the way through September 30.
That is correct.
So if we take the money from the recruitment, what's the downside of that?
There is no more active recruitment grant applications being accepted. So there is no downside there as far as I can see it.
Right.
The one that we have active, I did not include that funding. That funding is already allocated.
All right, so you got a total of $45,000 in for downtown business
That is correct.
and 5 applications.
Yes.
Was there a recommendation as to how much to fund each application?
I did not, the finance committee doesn't recommend an amount. They simply score and rank the applications based on the merit of the scope of work.
Okay, so can we, Commission, if we could, can we just take it to the downtown district first and then move on to the south afterwards, or do you?
Yes,
So we don't confuse what we're dealing with?
yes.
And we start out by finding out which one of the 6 is not going to be included today because it didn't meet minimum standards.
Did you hear that question, Mandy?
Yes, so 221 South 4th Street scored 68. You have to score at least a 70 to be considered for funding.
What?
You have to score at least a 70 to be considered for funding.
2 points away.
Well, that's what this
They can reapply in the next cycle.
Do we have,
There's nothing that says they can't reapply.
do we have the ability to make an adjustment?
Can we, yeah, as a board, can we not make some kind of?
Well, then what's the point of having a rule?
The point is a little bit of discretion. A little bit of discretion is also here right there. Now, you are disqualified from making, because you have people, individuals scoring this thing as well. It's not a computer that they put the information in and the computer processes to the inside. You have people making this decision. So.
I can let you know that the committee did not feel that there was enough information within the application to make to really fully understand the project or all of the requirements. And that's why it scored under a 70. It wasn't that they didn't feel like it might be a good project on some level at another time. It was that they didn't have enough information in the packet to judge it on the same level that they judged the other ones on. You know, they can only score them based on the information that's turned in with the application.
I like to make a recommendation that when you get things that, I mean, the community need to look at, not putting them so close to like, it's like, I'm just 2 points away from being qualified for, I mean, that just kind of would bother. I submitted an application, but there's just.
Okay, with that being said, that leaves us with the remaining 5 in the central business.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I guess I am new on this, and so I'm gonna try to say this as delicately as I have the ability, which is not very delicate. It looks to me like we either have the ability to help somebody out for real, or we have the ability to like spread it out amongst everybody where we haven't done a single thing whatsoever. So I'm not so sure that we don't need to make the decision first. Do we give everybody a few bucks? It's not gonna make any difference whatsoever, or do we go on and fund a couple of these at the level that it's gonna help? That is actually gonna make a difference, change a person's life, make a difference in how much comes in.
That actually was a general consensus from the applicants in the first cycle. A lot of them were very disappointed that they didn't get a higher amount, because they still have to complete the entire scope of work. A lot of them, just about everybody was disappointed that, like Commissioner Turner just said, that they didn't really get enough to truly make a difference in the project, for the most part.
It just seems to me like, and if I'm by myself, I'll just shut up, Madam Mayor, and keep it to myself, but I believe that we're not helping anybody out by splitting this little bit of money up amongst 5 people. I just don't believe we are. I think we ought to take the top 3, and we've got $45,000, take the top 3 and give them $15,000 apiece, and then we've made a difference. They might actually be able to go and do the project. They might actually be able to move forward. And part of this calculation that we make here should be how we're going to raise the tax basis in the TIF district, where the money can come back in at a higher level than what we're folding it at. That would be the key at some point in the future. By giving somebody $1,500 or $3,000, I just don't think you've made any difference at all. A lot of them can't move forward with the project with that little bit of money anyhow. So we haven't done anything but held back somebody that it might make a life-changing difference to. So that's all I have to say for that.
I actually agree.
Commissioner Jones? Commissioner Dolan?
I agree. I mean, basically, that's the same thing I said when we established this policy last year. When we talked about the amount of money that is given to each of the applicants and the impact that it'll make on our project. So, I'm totally in agreement with that.
I'm in absolute agreement with Commissioner Turner. And when the applicants went into the process, the application process, they were under the impression that this was a competitive grant process. So I just feel that it was this is key to them understanding that it needs to make a difference in the impact on the project and making sure that they can move forward and the project.
Ms. Jackson?
Well, my take on it is because the policy is currently in place, you know, what do you do at this point? So, my take would be if the policy can't be adjusted and these are the terms that these candidates, went on, we proceed with it. However, I do agree that it is a small amount of money, but if that's all we're working with, then that's all.
And I agree with Commissioner Turner, and I can only just this was well before I was the mayor. I did receive $500 recruitment grant funding for my business downtown, and I got $5,000. Am I still gonna do what it's gonna do? Yes, but did it really make a difference? Absolutely not. It would have been nicer, better, more impactful to have a larger pot of money. So I can agree with that. There is no policy about how much we give each applicant at this point, that we just have this maximum amount of money to work with. So how many we choose to give, how much, is not, we have to determine that. Commissioner Turner?
Yes. I know that the policy was different many years ago, but they actually at some point put the $25,000 cap on there, and I understand why they did it, to try to move it back. To spread the money out a little more, and I certainly understand that, but 25,000, it does make a difference in a lot of projects, but we don't have that much money today, and I would like to offer a motion, Madam Mayor. I'd like to offer a motion that we take the 3 top ranked projects, which are 714 St. John's Avenue, 608 Oak Street, and
210.
10 St. John's Avenue, and give them $15,000 apiece.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. Second, if you say Commissioner Captain. Okay, thank you. All in favor? Any opposition? Okay, thank you.
Then let's move on to the South Historic District, Mandy.
Yes, we have one application, 617 Emmett Street. There is plenty of funding within this GL line. There is an availability of 20, which is the maximum you could award anyway. This application, I believe, is Miss Thompson still in the audience? She was there earlier, so it's her house. If you have any questions about the project itself.
Does anybody have any questions of the homeowner? Please come up, give your name and address. Please.
Hi, Mandy. Jean Thompson, 27 Emmett Street in Palatka. I don't know, does this mean that I might be eligible to get the whole amount in? That this designated.
I'm sorry.
You have a cap of 20, is that correct, Mandy?
Yes, I believe so. That is correct.
So that would be the total amount that you could feasibly get, was the cap of 20.
I'll make a recommendation, or I make the motion that we allow the $20,000 to be.
But what was the total cost of your project, Ms. Thompson? Because we can only do half.
You know, right now I don't have the application in front of me, Mandy, but
It's Sunny can scroll to it. It's right there in the agenda.
Yeah.
Now, you could award up to the full amount, and then we can only reimburse up to half of the allowable costs under the scope.
Correct.
Yeah.
Is there something additional other than the 25,800? I can tell you the page and what I have here, but none of the pages are numbered, so I don't know how to tell you how to get there.
You said total was 25,000.
I have the application up.
So
Total estimate was 23,100 to 25,800, correct?
yeah, I should have gone over it before.
But that,
But I've got I know the electricity was like 19,500, and the roof, if like you can see there as pressed metal roof, and I need to be, I'd like to save because I have that nice design, and one of the few houses in the neighborhood that still have that, and I'd like to get around the chimneys need to be free. Still soft and everything we can afford.
Is the total 33.9?
Mayor,
And the total, I don't have the front porch on your mother's.
Commissioner Turner has a question.
Commissioner, yeah,
am I missing something, Mandy? I mean, basically, she's asking for $25,800, and we can't give her but half according to the rules. Is that correct?
That is correct. We can only do half of the cost.
25.8, we can only do half. according to the rules.
That's the max.
So you make a motion, now you be right.
Second.
okay, we have a motion and second to award her for the grant.
12,900.
Yeah.
How much?
12,900.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Discussion recommendation billing St. John's Avenue, 3rd to 11th.
Mayor, I just want to let you know that it's on our agenda tomorrow's meeting to go ahead and do from the railroad track out to Palm Avenue. So I don't have any reason to believe that's not going to take place tomorrow as far as us. So I just felt like y'all should know that as part of this discussion. Sorry, y'all can go ahead.
That's a good update. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, as requested, we went back to the contractor. We revisited their bid documents and they've come back with an estimate. Actually, the estimate change order proposal total of $491,000. It is on Thursday's City Commission agenda for consideration. I will add that we're going to need to put a $50,000 utility contingency on that to deal with some over milling, to deal with the transitions that you see at some of the intersections. And just some of the unforeseen, as we start milling through those layers of asphalt, we will encounter some manholes and things that we don't know are under there that just covered up.
Is that included in the 177 you're asking to change, or is that in addition to the 177?
It'll be in addition to, it's not a request of this board. It'll come from the commission out of the Better Place Reserve. I'm just giving it for informational purposes so that when I report on Thursday night, 5 of the members understand why they're 2 different companies. So the request is simply to move forward with this. And if you approve this allocation from reserves to the transfer line, which will go to Better Place, then the commission then can consider this on Thursday night. And this actually includes from 3rd Street all the way to the railroad tracks. Originally, it was just 4th Street. But in looking at the condition of that asphalt, it's appropriate to go ahead and resurface that at this time as well.
So Commissioner Trey.
Do you know what your time frame is going to be on this if it gets through the committee, the city commission? I'm assuming the next city commission meeting, or
within 60 days. We want some time to actually reach back out to the merchants and talk. With
you
them
can't
about
get
how
done quicker than us. That's no fair.
Well, you're having to reconstruct your road. We're just telling you, resurfacing that. Yeah.
Madam Mayor, I'm ready to offer a motion if you're ready to accept one.
Did you have a question, Commissioner Moore?
What Jonathan mentioned about from 3rd Street to the railroad tracks in conjunction with what we got going from railroad tracks to Palm, right? So that's kind of all inclusive. Yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
I have a question.
Commissioner Johnson.
So, those intersections, I've seen the work that they completed with the brakes. Will they be repaired doing this resurfacing? Because there are on 5th Street, I think 6th Street, 5th, 6th, and I believe 7th, if I'm not mistaken, but 5th and 6th definitely. Doing that transition, it is bumpy. It's probably worse than what it was prior to being repaired. That's going to be addressed. Because I got several calls. I went up there myself and kind of bad.
Yeah, and let me, for the benefit of everybody, try and give an explanation as to why that is. So when we resurface a roadway, we actually have to get it in compliance with ADA standards. And what happens over time in a town like ours, when they just keep putting asphalt over asphalt, and those layers are not consistent from the edge of the curb to the center of the road, the slope of the roadway increases. So you go from being out of tolerance in the running slope. And that's what we were addressing when we inserted the paver intersections, is we brought the grade down, Commissioner. So right now you have that transition and it can be quite abrupt. In some intersections, it was a little bit better if you're able to cut back a little bit further. But to answer your question, yes, and that is that over milling that I speak of. So something that the Public Works Director and myself still have to do is walk the street and give the contractor the limits of that over milling. There will be areas where we mill down 3 inches and transition back to the standard 1.5 inch mill, which the rest of the corridor will get, and it will smooth those transitions out. And the contractor is still not relieved of the work of the intersection. There's still some punch list items that they're addressing where the brick was installed around some of the manholes. We're going to be going out and marking up a few more of those items for them to come back with the subcontractor and repair.
All right, because I was gonna ask that question about how much responsibility goes back to the contractor for them to deliver product that we're okay with.
Yeah, so the brickwork that is on the punch list, those are deficiencies. Those are things that they have to correct. Those are things where it was installed improperly and some of the bricks are failing because they don't have proper bedding underneath them. They're going to fix that. The transition that I speak of, that's a result of us breaking the 2 phases out because the project cost too much. So we have to drop the grade of the road to be in compliance with ADA, but we didn't have the money at the time to do the entirety of the project. And you may recall there was a previous conversation about breaking out the sidewalks so we could advance the resurfacing. So now we can address the resurfacing and those transitions. We still have some ADA compliance issues on the sidewalk, but that's a conversation for a later day.
So one last question. Are there any audits that goes on when we complete like this project and see how many change orders we had in per project, or because we had quite a bit of change orders and they've been for the upward amounts. Because I seen one, just think we're gonna address that on Thursday, don't say anything about that. I mean, I want to know how we get so far off, and I know some things happen unexpectedly, but it concerns me that we're getting a high number of change orders and the amounts based on the scope of work. So when I saw that efficiency in those areas, it definitely brings concern, and I hope that we can address that maybe Thursday. You can bring some pictures so that the rest of the commission understand what I'm talking about. And maybe they have questions for us to look at.
Yeah, of course, and maybe it'll help the explanation of how we're going to instruct them to overmill certain areas to help with that transition. But I would like to address the comment and question about the change orders. I don't remember the exact amount, but I'll just give you a visual display. The bid came in here. You gave a deductive change order, brought it all the way back down here, and you've added change orders. You're still not anywhere near what their original bid and their award was. So everything we've added back in was originally a competitively bid unit cost, and it was in the plan. So we just don't have enough money to get the project done in its entirety, unfortunately. So, but we're getting there, little by little.
Thank you.
Thank you for your information.
Anybody else have any questions? Okay, Commissioner Turner.
I move that we recommend to the city commission that we transfer 177,000. What was the exact number, Jonathan?
That's sunny.
Sonny, do you know the exact number is 177? Can we just do up to 178,000 to the Better Place Plan monies to resurface that project?
Second. Well, it's gonna go from the central TIF to Better Place, correct? So it's actually going from central TIF reserves to Better Place.
Yes.
Staff did ask for 177, but did I hear your motion correctly? It's up to 178.
178.
Thank you, sir.
Motion. So the 77 check.
I think it's 177,000.
I knew it was something like that.
They run tight.
Would the second rather do 177, Commissioner? I have no.
And we'll do change orders to get to. We go there.
177 it is, Commissioner.
Second for 177 from Central Business District to Better Place. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, one housekeeping note. I think that it would be helpful when we send out our quarterly agendas, if we go ahead and put a brief recap of our budget numbers as of that time, reserves, your grant balances, those sorts of things. I think it'll help the commission and the members to have an opportunity to review before we get here and may save some time and also help some clarity. So we'll go ahead and, Sonny, if you could, we'll try to make that happen.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
We will have a finance director as of Thursday. She's going to be here for me to introduce her to you. So,
Okay, report, Small Business Development Center. The form.
I guess the first question you can ask your finance director is, can you move TIF money into a better place? Can you swap them two funds? I don't know. You probably do. I mean, I'm not. I don't know. Usually I ask your daughter those questions.
Okay, introduce yourself, please.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners, staff, and guests. Rick Walk from the Small Business Development Center. Probably in front of you, you have a list of the small business activity report. It looks like this. I'll be addressing that as I go through. To start with, though, this particular report.
It's not there, Commission.
It's not there. Okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just see a bunch of people looking for it. I'm sorry, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I had advised them that that wouldn't come before them today, and during our pre-agenda meeting, because none of it had been submitted, and you told me you were just gonna have a brief report today, so I thought that was gonna be in the June meeting.
You're a little longer. Okay. So I just wanted to.
On the agenda.
Oh.
This isn't on the agenda. I was looking forward to it. It's not in the back and on the agenda. Okay.
That's fine. Yeah, go ahead. It is.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Carl.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Mayor. Just the accounting for what you would have had here for the city is different than what I do totally. So what happens is it gets broken out city, county, and then what my total projects are. So I just want to give you this quarter, year to date, obviously quarterly. For outreach, it's been over 50 hours. For the training workshops where I actually present in front of people and groups and so forth, over 32 hours. And then professional development has been 7 hours. Along the lines of the actual productivity, we go to the funding. So the city report just shows one new business created with one individual and $18,000. That's just for the city. So if I look at my total for the year, it's 6.5 million. 2.5 million were actually last year, which I reported to previously that it was upcoming. It just takes a while to show up in all the reports. And that happened to be in the county and not in the city. Year to date, on top of that, we've got about 75,000 on one, about a little over 200,000 on another one, and then my largest one to date just got approved at 3.4 million. So in addition to the 2.5 million, there's a current balance of 3.6 that I felt get these businesses to the finish line, which is a business plan, pro formas, et cetera, you know, all the documentation that they need for it, and get them to the bank with it, and then the loan actually gets approved. On top of that, there's about $260,000 last year that I can get credit for because the way we work is we're pre-funded via the, you know, the CRA and in the state of Florida and the SBA. And so the people, clients that we help have to sign a form that says, yeah, Rick helped. But two of these people, which were the $260,000, never, I can't get back a hold of them and they sort of disappeared. So I'm not getting credit for that also. Business starts year to date are 3, but there are 4 that I have to complete. So that brings me up to 7. So that's kind of the layout right now. The outlook for small business is actually really good. A lot of people are applying for small businesses. There are a lot of startups. There's a lot of funding still going on. Even though the economy, you know, if you ask two economists, you know, what's going to happen, they'll never agree, right?
So a lot of people are thinking that the economy is going to go into a little bit of a recession, but that really hasn't slowed down the lending. Hasn't really slowed down any of the business starts. All right, is there any question about the funding or some of the work that I've been doing?
Do you have any questions, Mr. Pond?
So I would like to share, if I could get Sunny to hand these out. Yes, sir.
You're part of the Regional Development Council as well. Are you part of that group?
No, sir, it's just a small business development.
Okay.
So we're in an 18 county region for the University of North Florida.
Okay. Okay.
So being handed out along the way is something that came from Mark Litton at the Chamber of Commerce. He, of course, is the Director of Economic Development, and he had Mr. Ron Starner show up. Some of you were there to hear the economic development report that he had. But I would like to point out there's one thing that he had, and we're talking about economic development here several times tonight, especially with Main Street USA. Number 1, number 2, and number 3 on this list of the 7 habits of highly effective small towns. Number 1 is a greater awareness of local entrepreneurship and the support for it. Number 2 is working with the community colleges and high schools. And number 3 is the training of our students and community members to be able to accept those that come along. So one of the things that Ron was talking about and what this kind of sums up is, yes, we're getting people that are moving here from outside the community to start businesses and to buy homes, to retire and what have you. But I think one of the best ways to grow the entrepreneurship is pretty much what Ron's talking about here, is to grow it internally. And so we are a community of small businesses. One of the reasons why I moved here, I love helping small businesses. And so I think this just goes to reinforce the vision for the future that you have for the city of Palatka and Putnam County also, as to where do you want to be in 5 or 10 years. If you want to be there in 10 years, then where do you have to be in 5 years to get there? So you're talking about small business and the ability to maintain it and grow it instead of just having big box stores coming in. This is a very helpful piece for considering economic development, is to invest in small business and their opportunities. With that, I was a little bit longer than I said. Sunny?
We're gonna take it off next time.
But anyhow, that's it in a nutshell. Small businesses.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other things from before the CRA board? Any other issues? Anybody on the board? Do we bring up? Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn? We have a unanimous motion to adjourn. Okay. Thank you all. Done.